Hey everyone. So I just finished my morning practice, and this is honestly my favorite part of every single day. And it got me thinking that it might be fun to just talk to you all about why practicing can be so much fun for you as a guitar player or as a person in general. And so I have my phone here. I have a few talking points that I thought of that I think you might be interested in. So I haven't done one of these videos in a while. This is going to be totally unscripted and just from my experience with these topics. So, growing up, I always liked practicing guitar more than I liked performing, me personally. And one of the reasons why I always liked practicing more than performing growing up is that whenever I would perform, I would usually have to lug an amp, an effects pedal board. At that time, it was a multi-effects pedal board that I was using, and my guitar on 2 or 3 trains, go to New York City, perform a couple of songs with me playing just rhythm guitar for the most part with occasional leads. And then I would lug that all back home. And that trip would take at least 2 hours. Then we would be setting up for at least an hour. Then we would sit around for at least an hour. We perform for 30 minutes to an hour, and then pack up for an hour, socialize for an hour, and then I'd commute home for another 2 or 3 hours. So growing up, that always rubbed me the wrong way, that I would spend a total of 4 to 5 hours total commuting, 1 to 2 to 3 hours setting up, 1 or 2 hours sitting around doing nothing to perform for 30 minutes or at the most an hour. Just the logic of that was never exciting to me, especially when I could just wake up, sit in my bed or sit in a chair and practice for as long as I wanted and get the same joy of playing the guitar. I know for a lot of people, the idea of performing is what really gives them that thrill, that excitement, that thing that we all love about being part of this world, so to speak. But for me, that thrill and excitement always came from figuring out something new on the guitar, whether it be a concept, a lick, a song, whatever it was, figuring that out, coming to a realization, which was usually by myself or after a guitar lesson. That's the stuff that always brought me the most joy. And I could always get those things far more efficiently than I could by performing live. So that's a little bit of my background, what kind of when I realized I liked to practice and learn and teach more than I did to perform. And then as I got older, I won't give you the whole story here because I want to focus on the aspects of practice today. But as I got older, I got more things that I had to do. When I went to college, I had 2 jobs the whole time I was at college, and I was like part of different clubs and whatnot. And basically, my life got so busy in college that I didn't have time to really enjoy practicing like I did when I was growing up. And I didn't reconnect with that joy again until I started studying Indian classical music. And I'll explain to you a little bit about that and how practice became beautiful for me again. So my primary teacher, and I was learning vocal music. I also learned Indian classical music on guitar and other stuff as well. But point being, my main teacher, my main inspiration is a singer named Samarth Nagarkar. And he's an amazing singer and amazing thinker and person in general. And so I was attempting to learn how to sing, and I learned a lot from him, especially about the joy of practice. And it connected with something that I had when I was a teenager that I felt like I had lost along the ways in my young adulthood, my late teens, early 20s. And I guess the main concept I learned again from him was that performing, at least for him and his music, was just an opportunity to showcase what he had been practicing. And that's a really big twist of thought here. Some people practice just so they can get on stage and enjoy being on stage. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But that thought process never resonated with me personally. For Samarth, at least in my observations and talking to him, a lot of being on stage was just an opportunity to showcase to other people and to the world what he was able to figure out in his practicing. And again, that thought process really resonated with me because it gave performing something that could be significant besides just the joy of being on stage, since I never felt that joy. I do believe, by the way, that performing live or performing to a recording or performing in a studio with other musicians, whatever the case may be, I still believe that's an extremely important and valuable part of the guitar journey, because it's almost a way of pressure testing and proving to yourself and to your brain that you can do the thing you've been practicing. So I'm not trying to dismiss live performance. It's super important. But again, this talk is about practice. So yeah, when I started studying with him and I started to get deep into practicing Indian music in particular, I remembered how beautiful it could be to just be by yourself for 1, 2, 3 hours, working on a very small idea and having that shape and take place and kind of transform. There's another aspect of this where it's like when you're in the practice room, if you can find that state, almost like a meditative state, it's like no one else is on the planet. No one else is bugging you on your phone. No one else is bothering you, beeping their horn in traffic. It's like it's just you and your instrument. And it can be a very beautiful experience that kind of takes you away from the other aspects of being human that can be pretty annoying at times, right? And one other thought that came to mind similar to this, and this is a sporting example, but I promise we'll get back to music very quickly. In grappling, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's this group of brothers called the Meow Brothers. And they have a school not too far from where I live in Jersey City, New Jersey. And people would always talk about how they were super obsessed with drilling, which is basically practicing. And, they would spend all their time on the mats in the school. They would sleep there. They would practice nonstop. And one story that resonated with me in particular, which is very, very similar to this idea that I'm talking about practicing being just, about performing being just a way to show what you practiced. There's a story of how they would go to competitions, and these guys used to compete every weekend. It was crazy for many, many, many years. And people would say that they would get to the competition, they would see the Meow Brothers. These are two twins. So they would see them backstage practicing, drilling. Then they would go on stage and have their match or whatever. The match lasts 5 to 10 minutes. Then when the match was over, they would immediately go back, find a mat backstage, and continue to drill and practice with each other. And that kind of mindset to me, and again, I never talked to them about this topic, but that mindset to me shows that what they really love the most is the art of improvement and exploring what they can figure out in terms of their martial art. And that, when I heard that story, it was like, again, that totally resonated with the idea to me about practice and how beautiful practice can be. So that was kind of my quick overview of why I think practice is beautiful and why it can be beautiful. And now I have a few notes about something else that I really think about a lot, and that's the idea of morning practice in particular, and why I believe it can be so crucial. First, back to Indian music, Samarth, my vocalist teacher back then, he used to always stress to me the importance of practicing in the morning, preferably first thing in the morning. And I would read into older texts about Indian classical music. For those of you who don't know, this is a genre of music that's been around for a very, very long time, hundreds of years. It's been in evolution for even longer than hundreds of years. And so there are all of these really old texts that people wrote about this genre of music. And a lot of them also talk about the importance of morning practice. And you have to imagine that this is a time, in terms of music, this is a time when we didn't have, neuroscience, right? There was no scanning the brain to see the effects of different things and whatnot. We weren't even there yet. We didn't even have germ theory yet. There was no polio vaccine. There were no cesarean sections in pregnancy, right? This is, a different time of human history. And even back then, they were stressing the importance of morning practice. And now today, what we've learned through various forms of neuroscience is you're at your peak creativity first thing in the morning or close to first thing in the morning. And of course, some people are going to be different. There are some people who are night owls who feel their peak creativity later in the day or in the evening or at night. But it's pretty likely, and I would say it's very common, that many humans, most of you listening, will have some type of peak creativity early in the morning. And when we're talking about something like practice, which relies so heavily on creativity, I think doing it in the morning at your peak creativity, this just shows that morning practice can be super useful. So this whole topic now is about morning practice, if you couldn't tell yet. So yeah, peak creativity is in the morning. Thus then, practicing in the morning can be even more crucial to you as a guitar player. And what I notice is that I'll be practicing for at least 2 hours. For me, it's usually 2 to 3 hours, 2.5 to 3 hours. I notice that, yes, my practice is getting done and I'm getting better at specific things on the guitar. But I also notice throughout this time, I'm getting so many new ideas about so many things. All of these new YouTube video ideas will come to me. All of these new business ideas will come to me. All of these different ideas with my relationship with my partner and how I can be a better spouse, how I can be a better father in the future. All of these ideas start to come to me early in the morning while I'm practicing. So it becomes this time when I can get better at guitar and also just, without even trying, get better as a person. And I strongly believe it has to do with having the routine of being here every morning, having myself being in peak creativity, having things that I'm working on with the guitar, and letting my brain also do things in the background. Hopefully this is not getting too scattered, but there's also a lot of studies that show we do a lot of our best thinking while doing other things. And you've probably experienced this before. You might be in a good mood on a long drive if you like to drive, and you're focusing on the road, but all of a sudden, all of these creative ideas will come to your head, even though you weren't planning on having those creative things come to you. Or maybe you like to go on long walks. You might be on a long walk listening to a podcast about something unrelated, and you get all of these creative ideas for your job or for music that just kind of appear in your brain. So we're also, in addition to being in peak creativity in the morning, we have this structured thing that we're doing, which gives our brain the ability to also process other things that we're not focused on in the moment. Because of course, some of your practice is going to be very, very deliberate, very concentrated, very focused, and, very difficult to some degree in terms of your brain's processing. But then you have other aspects of practice that are more meditative and relaxing, that are not so forward thinking, if that makes sense. Another great thing about morning practice in particular is, and I'm saying this as a positive thing, but you get guitar done and out of the way. A lot of times we'll say to ourselves, okay, I'm going to do that thing later. I'm going to go to the gym later. I'm going to eat my salad later. I'm going to do whatever important thing we know is important. Play guitar if it's important to you. I'm going to do that later once I wake up, once I get home from work, once I took the kids to whatever, right? And then later comes and we're exhausted. And we don't do it. We do it for a few minutes. We do it half-butted. I don't know if I can curse on YouTube anymore. Anyway, we don't do it with the full intensity that we would like to have done it. And we get into this pattern of doing those things, and before you know it, a month, a week, a month, a year, 5, 10 years pass, and we realize we haven't been doing that thing that we love to do so much because we keep saying we're going to do it later. When you do it first thing in the morning, it's done. And since you're at peak creativity, it was probably done in a stronger way, in a better way than it would have been done later. And related to this is this idea of building momentum throughout your day as a human. When you achieve something that's important to you first thing in the morning, it really sets you up to be a very productive and happy and better person throughout the day. If everything else goes wrong in the day, if I walk outside and my bus is late on the way to work, and then I'm late to work, and then I spill my coffee, and then I get caught in the rain on the way home, and then I get yelled at by my boss because I messed something up, and then I get home and the dishes are all dirty and I have to clean the dishes, and then I cheat on my diet so I eat cake for dinner. The day went totally unlike I planned, but I still got 1% better at guitar. And I can always feel like I at least achieved that if nothing else went right. But the other thing I noticed is that once I have achieved this thing of doing good at guitar in the morning, all of a sudden, my likelihood of having a good day increases dramatically. Because you start to build momentum and start to achieve other things that you wanted to do. You finish your morning practice, you're in a great mood, and you're like, you know what? I can make it to the gym on my way to work today. I can squeeze in a 30-minute workout before I get to work, and then you do that. And you're like, wow, it's only 9 o'clock. I'm at work. I already practiced guitar. I already went to the gym. And then it's like, you know what? I'm having a great day. I practiced guitar. I had a great workout. I'm not going to eat donuts for breakfast. I don't need that anymore. I don't need those donuts for breakfast to make me feel something that I'm alive, because I'm already alive from my practice, from my guitar playing and from the gym. So maybe I'll have a healthier breakfast. And then you're like, you know what? I'm feeling good. Let me text my wife or whatever something sweet. And before you know it, you have sculpted and crafted this beautiful day where you felt alive and happy and joyous. And you did it all by starting with guitar in the morning. And so instead of weeks and months and years passing by where you said, I'll do it later, and you do it not great later, weeks, months, and years pass by where you did it first thing in the morning. You built on the momentum throughout the rest of your day, and you've just had a great experience overall because of it. And that pillar is guitar for me. I have talked to athletes. I'm not an athlete, but I find athletes fascinating. So I try to learn about them and their process as much as possible, because I think it can also apply to guitar as well. But anyway, when I've talked to athletes, a lot of them say the same thing about a morning practice, getting out of bed at 5 a.m. and going on a long run, even though they don't want to do it, and how that sets them up for success and the rest of their thing. And so, yeah, I find the same thing is true for guitar. Oh yeah, I just recorded the video. I forgot to say this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. And if you have any topics you want to talk about like this in a more relaxed way, leave them below and I'll try to address them to the best of my ability. Or I'll find someone else and have them come on to talk with me and you who's better at that topic than I am, so that we can talk about it together. Yeah. Here is another really, really interesting thing about practicing guitar first thing in the morning. And this is something that I've been noticing a lot lately. So lately, I've been spending a lot of time trying to develop new vocabulary in blues and jazz. Basically learning licks and trying to incorporate them deep into my body so that when I go to play guitar, instead of the same licks that I've been playing for 20 years, these new licks come out. Now, this is a process that is very difficult for a lot of people. People talk about this all the time, and they ask questions online, and I ask questions to different guitarists too, more experienced guitar players, because it's like you spend weeks, months practicing these new ideas, and then when you go to perform, you play the same old ideas. And so the question is, how do we bridge that gap between a lick that we learned and actually being able to play that lick when it matters most? And my answer to this has to do with morning practice as well. So what I noticed is, let's just say I'm working on a new lick. In fact, I'll even play a tiny bit of guitar. So I'm playing a B flat blues, right? And we have all of these typical guitar licks. And so let's just say I'm working on this new sets of licks. Spoiler alert, this is what I'm working on with my blues aspect of my guitar practice. We're talking about the major pentatonic box over here. That's the whole sound we're going for. And so this is a sound that I haven't really explored much. I'd explore major pentatonic boxes, but I would explore it right here. Instead of right here. Right? Anyway. So what I noticed is, if in my morning practice, I'm working on that kind of a lick. I might spend 20 minutes just doing that and exploring the other things around there, like this. To the 4 chord. Back to the 1 chord. So if I spent a lot of time doing that in my morning practice, what I notice is that as I'm going through the rest of my day, in my mind, I'll just keep going. That'll just keep playing nonstop in my brain throughout the day. And I have found that this is like a crazy secret to actually incorporating new things into your playing. And I've never seen anyone talk about this. Practice it first thing in the morning. Let it get stuck in your brain in almost an annoying way. As you go throughout your day, that'll just keep playing in the background. And then the next time you sit to play guitar, it'll just be there a lot quicker than if you played it a few times, went to the rest of your day and didn't think about it. And so this goes back to the thing that I was talking about before, about how when you're working on something new, when you're working on a challenge, a problem, whatever the case may be, a lot of the most intensive work happens in the background of your mind while you're doing other things. So I worked on that lick. Worked on it for a while in the morning first thing. I go throughout my day and do other stuff. But my brain is playing it over and over and over. I'm hearing it over and over and over. My brain is making it go deep inside of me. In other words, I find that morning practice tends to be more effective for getting things deep in your body. And you can actually feel it happening at times throughout the day. And I guess that's also a disclaimer. If you're somebody who gets annoyed by having things play in their mind nonstop all day long, maybe morning practice is not for you. I don't know. I feel like every musician and, hobbyist bedroom players, you're still a musician, obviously. I feel like we all, to some degree, don't mind things being stuck in our head because things get stuck in our head all the time. And, a lot of guitar players say, especially ones who are adults, who are on YouTube, who are working with music online, or maybe they're recording artists, whatever the case may be, a lot of them talk about the fact that they don't practice anymore. They haven't practiced for years. They did most of their intensive practice as teenagers. And I totally understand that, right? Because you obviously usually get the biggest part of your progress at something early on, right? That's when you take your biggest steps forward. That's when you're doing your most practice. That's when you're most excited about it. And especially if you end up being a professional musician, you spend so much time doing things that make money, like teaching, like recording, whatever the case may be, that you don't have hours to just sit around and practice anymore. and the hours you spend practicing will not yield as big of a result for you as they would have when you were earlier in your life. So I understand a lot of guitar teachers saying that they don't practice anymore. Maybe it's just because I'm not nearly as good as I should be. Maybe it's just because I feel like I still have so much more to improve at. And I hope no one takes this the wrong way, but I'll be honest, when I see other guitar players say things like, I'm finding it hard to find things to work on, or my practice feels stale, it's one thing to feel like your practice is just kind of getting too repetitive and you need to change things up. I totally understand that. But when anyone says they can't find things to work on, in my mind, I'm always like, well, Tommy Emmanuel says that he still practices. And if Tommy Emmanuel, who's I don't know how old and better than almost all of us, if he still finds things to practice, there's really no excuse for anyone else on the planet except for maybe Guthrie Govan and Julian Lage. But Julian Lage also says he still practices. So I don't know. It seems like the best guitar players on the planet still spend a lot of their time practicing and finding new things. They might not all call it practice, but anyway, I'm going on too much of a tangent. My point is that if Julian Lage, Tommy Emmanuel, etc., if the best guitar players on the planet still feel like there's something to be done in practice, we all can still find something to work on. Maybe you need to work on it with a guitar teacher. I still go to different guitar teachers all the time to get different tips and pointers and new ideas to inspire me. So I just feel like it's something we can all continue to work on. Even if it's 15, 20, 30 minutes a day, that's still, when you add up over a month and a year and many years, that's still super significant for your progress as a guitar player. So I totally understand where they're coming from. But for me personally, again, the joy of guitar is practicing. So if I don't practice, I'm not going to want to teach. I'm not going to want to record music or anything like that because all of the passion stems from what I'm doing in my practice session. And if you're an amateur musician or a hobbyist, I think that's also the best approach to have in terms of how you approach your instrument. Because if you're not making your primary income from guitar, then guitar is going to be there most likely just to fulfill you, to make you happier as a human. And if the guitar is going to be there to make you happier as a human, imagine if you can I'll say this, imagine if you could find your peak joy from practicing instead of from playing live. If you're lucky, you'll get to perform live once a week, twice a week at the most, but you could practice every day. So imagine if that joy of being live on stage came to you when you were by yourself and you can do that every single day, every morning. How much more happier could you potentially be as a human? I think about that a lot, and I feel that a lot every day when I'm practicing. People ask me sometimes, am I planning on performing anytime soon? Am I working on any music? Yes, I'm working on recording some music right now and maybe performing at some point. But I guess the reason I never have that drive to perform is because I get that joy from practicing and from teaching, and I feel totally fulfilled doing that. And hopefully you could take something away from this topic and feel more fulfilled in your own practice as well. Oh yeah, if you like this approach to music and life and stuff, oneguitarcourse.com, link below. I have my lesson. That's where it is.